Welcome everyone to Young and Seasoned. I am Linda Carroll
I'm Caroline Whitaker. Hi.
and I have these up. This just okay, come on, change slides. Okay. First of all, want to do a little bit of introductions. As I said, I'm Linda Carroll and wanted to just share a little bit of background of my industry experience in that I'm an expert capacity manager with Insono. I have 44 years in IT with 30 years or more. My focus has been on capacity management. I've worked for IBM, American Software, Price Waterhouse. Actually, before it was Price Waterhouse Coopers, Equifax. Some of the things I've done along my journey is I developed a capacity forecasting methodology that I still use today. It's on a spreadsheet and it has a very high degree of accuracy. I have done presentations at Share, IBM Tech U. This is my second one at GuideShare, Europe, CMG, and other conferences on capacity forecasting. I am a IBM Redbook author on Linux on IBM System Z performance measurement and tuning. Here's the kicker. I graduated from college in 1980 from Georgia State University with a BBA in information systems. And on a personal note, I live in Kennesaw, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. And one of the things my family got to do is we were a host family for several of the coaches from the Republic of Georgia during the 1996 Summer Olympics, which was absolutely amazing. And so, Caroline,
Yes, so I am not as experienced. Um, I'm not a newbie anymore. It's been 8 years now. I still feel like the newbie. So I joined Insono as part of the internship program back in 2016. It's now called the Mainframe Academy. I went to school at the University of Central Arkansas here in Conway, Arkansas. I graduated in 2016 with a major in computer science. I minored in mathematics. I literally went from I joined the internship program over the summer. I had a last semester at school left. I on a Sunday I walked graduation, and Monday I was a full-time mainframe associate. So I went straight from school into the mainframe world. Um, I started off as a first level support for probably about 6 months before I was picked up by the capacity team, and I've been here ever since. So I'm currently a senior capacity management um, person, and I have spoke a couple times as a millennial mainframer. Was used to be considered a unicorn. I feel like there's more of us these days. I Share and CA World back in 2018, I believe. And as of this year, so 2024, I have been nominated. Well, I guess I'm more nominated. I was selected as an IBM champion. So I have gone from knowing nothing to being pretty integrated into the world in a short 8 years.
which is absolutely awesome. So let's think about this. In 1976, I got asked this question by my mother, why do you want to go to college? And so here's some fun facts about what was going on in the world in 1976. So think about this. The Cray 1 was the first commercially developed supercomputer. It was released by Seymour Cray's Cray Research, with the first purchaser being the Energy Resource and Development Administration in Los Alamos, New Mexico. This one is so hard to believe. Apple Computer Company was formed by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in California. That was in 1976. Think about how far Apple has come since then. In Washington, D.C., the Concorde service begins. The first class of women at the U.S. Naval Academy is inducted in Annapolis, Maryland. Barbara Jordan is the first African American to keynote a political convention. This one I love. The Space Shuttle Enterprise is rolled out of Palmdale, California. And Barbara Walter hosts the final presidential debate of the 1976 presidential election. And then think about this one. Microsoft is officially registered with the Office of Secretary of State of New Mexico. And where would we be without all of those things? Think about Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel, Teams, and all the things in between. Caroline, tell us about you.
Yeah, so back in 2016, here in little old Arkansas, the question never was if I was going to attend college, but where I was going to attend college. We're actually known as the city of colleges here in Arkansas because we have three colleges, not just one. So we're a fairly small town, but we have plenty of options as far as that goes. But in 2016, it wasn't really a matter of if you were going, college was just kind of expected at that point. Everybody says in order to get any kind of a career, you have to go to college. So that was just kind of what everybody did. Some things going on during that time, other than that, was the British rowing team becomes the first female crew and the first crew of four to cross the Pacific. Computer hackers tried to steal $1 billion from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and they were caught with a typo, which is fantastic. That one little typo can ruin your day. It can also ruin a hacker's day. The best album was supposedly Taylor Swift's 1989. I was absolutely not listening to Taylor Swift during those times. I was listening to music along the lines of Sabaton and Asking Alexandria, but that's a personal preference. Google's DeepMind artificial intelligence wins the Go challenge against Sealadol 4-1. Pokemon Go, everybody knows Pokemon Go, was first released during that year. Japan's Funai Electric announced that they would manufacture the world's last video cassette. The Apple iPhone was released without a headphone jack. I am still salty about this, and I would prefer my headphone jack back, but that's another tangent. And Facebook Live became a big deal, and we have moved way beyond Facebook Live these days.
Exactly. Think about that. I mean, think about this. Here we are on a video conference.
I know.
So think about this. When we think about the mainframe environment, when I got my first start in IT, my very first job at college was being the key punch operator for my COBOL class. Yes, I was responsible for typing all the cards. And I think it was a class of about 20 or 30. And so then, and this was when I was at the University of Maryland in Munich, Germany. And then when I was studying at Georgia State University, I would spend hours in the basement of the business building at the teletype machines where I would key in my COBOL and assembler programs, get a card deck back, run it through the reader, wait for it to be run. PC, there was no such thing as a PC back then. And my very first job at Equifax, I was in print delivery. I was still in college, and I figured my way to transition into the IT field was to start with a company where I could start basically from the ground up. And so I would actually burst and decollate forms. In other words, I would remove the carbon from all the copies from when it got printed on printed, and then I would deliver it to the different departments of the mailroom. Then I moved to technical support just before I graduated in college in 1980. And at that time, JCL, they didn't teach JCL in college. And then I had to learn about NVT and DOS. I'm now I'm aging myself, because then we went from DOS and NVT. And when I was at Equifax, when we migrated from NVT to NVS, we put signs all around the building saying NVT is dead. And people were absolutely horrified because everyone went by their three initials and they thought we were celebrating that somebody had died. And then we got an IBM 43P2 with, 8 gigs of memory. And we thought this was hot stuff. And today, this little cell phone, I've literally just got it this weekend, has 256 gigabytes on it. And I was excited about 208. So Caroline, what was your first experience when you joined Ensono?
So, Ensono was actually, well, I wouldn't say it was my first exposure into mainframes. It was my first real exposure into mainframes. Before Ensono, the the most you heard about mainframes were people in movies hacking into them. And if anybody keeps up with video games and current TV shows. The Fallout series TV show just came out, and I was actually playing Fallout background this time. And that's one of the things you do is you use terminals to hack into the mainframes, and a little green screen pops up, and you click around and you hack into it. And it's funny now going back and playing it because it's like, oh hey, well. This looks very familiar. I'm not hacking into them, but the green screen looks very familiar to what I do on a daily basis. So in college, we didn't talk about mainframes whatsoever. I think there's only one school in the whole state that I'm in that even has a mainframe program that I'm aware of. It may be different now. But we started off with C++ and we moved on to Java. We did things like Visual Basic. Everything was centered around distributed. At the tail end of my career at school, they were just starting to bring Python in as a common course that everybody was taking. The first time that I had heard of Zoe was at my first share that I attended it was either 2017 or 2018. I'm not entirely sure now, but that's considered commonplace now. The things that I grew accustomed to, like the green screen, people are using GUIs now. People that come in now, they don't see the green screen. They see what they're used to, what they were brought up with college, and it's all just an interface. Um, I I have like I'm old. I'm an old timer and I like my green screen. I'm an old 30-year-old and I don't want to take it away. So um but the things that I learned in college that I came into in Sono not using, so I was taught JCL, MXG, SAS, all on the job. But now you can use Java, Python, and the whole 9 yards on the mainframe as well. So they're integrating things that I used in school that I didn't initially think would apply to this job coming in, are now becoming the norm and what people use.
Well, and then to
Really?
to
Oh,
take, oh, go ahead. Well, what I was going to say
oh,
is that,
I was just going to mention AI.
oh, okay, go.
AI
Yes.
is a whole new thing that's starting up with the new 3.1. It comes with AI enhancements, and that's a whole nother ball game that we're starting to get into. That back when I was in school, I definitely wasn't on my radar of things I was keeping up with. So just in the short time that I have started, things have progressed a lot. Not to mention from when Linda first started.
Right, because back in the mid 2000 is when we had the introduction of Watson into this, and how Watson was like the first AI type project within IBM. And so then, we get, as we were just talking about learning the ropes, OJT, that was basically my way of doing this. Was I would work with seasoned team members to learn the ropes. I came into this industry, I was 21 years old. And back then, we would go to IBM classes on the operating system, on VSAM, Assembler, COBOL. And I can remember my very first task when I joined the tech team as a junior tech specialist was to rewrite the COBOL programs to go from 3330 DASD to 3350 because of the change in block sizes. So I would go to these week-long classes. I got involved in groups like the Computer Measurement Group in the early 1990s. I wrote my very first paper in 1988, sent it to my mentor who basically bled on it. It was accepted in at this time it was called BGS Technical Journal and the CMG Tech Journal, modeling a database with best one. So yes, I'm really dating myself with this. And then we had the other thing. It was called RTFM, read the manual. And so I was going through my closet here and actually found several of the old IBM manuals that we still have. And when we would work with these, we would actually put them in 3-ring binders. If you notice, they actually have hole punches for 3-ring binders, so that you could put them in there so that when you got updates from IBM, you could easily replace it. We also had yellow and green cards with the assembler codes and cheat sheets and things like that. So how's training done today? Caroline, what's
I
your experience been?
Yeah, I came in at a weird time. So when I came in, it was a known issue that we had a whole bunch of people leaving the industry and nobody was coming in to replace anybody. So when I first started, the internship program with Insono had just came into inception. And so I was a guinea pig. My internship started off with they threw down a 300-page manual in front of me and said, "Hey, read this." And that was my start to it. Within that internship, we created a lot of labs and one-on-ones and videos and things that we use now that have streamlined the process and made it a little less snooze fest, like reading a manual can be.
Mhm.
Your eyes start to glaze over about 150 pages into it. You start going on autopilot and you wonder if the light was green. Um, so I started about when I was about 22, so roughly about the same age. Um, but I was at the time considered kind of a unicorn. I remember going to my first share and I remember hanging out with everybody afterwards, and everybody was just calling themselves a dinosaur, and they were calling me the little dinosaur, and that I had been accepted into the fold, and it was wonderful that I was the new little one. Um, so our interns now that are coming in, um, man, I was 22 when I started. I'll be 31 this year. Um, so the interns that are coming in now are part of the Gen Z group, and we have more than just younger people coming in, but the people I feel like that come in generally are people that grew up with the technology. So instead of sitting down and reading a book, they're more used to going and Googling how you do things. And thankfully,
Mhm.
the manuals are online, which is convenient because you can't do a control F and find on a page in a physical book, but you can on, a computer, which makes things a little bit more easy to locate. Um, uh, well, I didn't, but now there are YouTube. YouTube has a plethora of information that you can just go
Mhm.
out, and if you want to go learn something, you can go find somewhere online that'll teach it to you. You don't necessarily need to join a formal class to learn things. I did learn a lot of things via on the job training. They assigned me, well, they didn't assign me. I was picked up by the capacity team's manager, and he took me under his wing and said, "I will teach you," and threw me into the fire pit, and we learned that way.
Mhm.
So I, I didn't get some of the formal training that I feel like happens more now. So I think my experience with it was probably a little bit more unique than what people are seeing nowadays with actual formalized internship and apprenticeship programs.
Yeah. And then that brings us to how the workforce landscape has changed over the years. In 1980, the technical arena was very male dominated. There were not very many women in the technical roles that we have today, and so one of the things was having to learn how to navigate those waters. Um, and over the years, even before I got into IT, there were several times that I have personally experienced this bias because I was a woman, not only in the workplace, but also in my everyday life. The very first time I really experienced this bias, um, I was working at a local camera store. I was 19. I was attending college. I was the assistant manager of the store. A man comes in, asks me and I ask him if I can help him. And he looks at me and he goes, I'll wait for him to get done. And I looked at him, um, and I said, "Sir, he's a high school student. What can I do for you?" I'm the assistant manager. And then another time I took my car in for repair and the mechanic tells me that the battery just died, like a computer. And he used those words, it just died like a computer, dying without a warning. And I said, you just used the wrong example with me because I know how computers give off warnings before they die. And so, I mean, there's been other instances that I've encountered along the way, and one of the things, one of the jobs that I had with one of the companies, the way the office was set up is we each had individual office suites, and some of the guys put like the big Budweiser posters, and I just didn't feel comfortable having to sit in that. And today that would have be considered sexual harassment, to have those type of posters in. And I basically had to ask for those to be removed. Um, and now today we have diversity training. We have to learn how to work with others. And in the earlier years, that just didn't exist. So, Caroline, what has your experience been in this?
So when I started, I remember sitting in my computer science 2 class, and I remember looking around and there was a whole 3 females, and that was it. We had 3 women in the class. And nowadays, I feel like there is a bigger push to try to get women into the STEM careers.
Hmm.
I'm wearing my mainframer Barbie shirt. It's a uh, Barbie has her own pink mainframe and she goes from conference to conference, and she kind of tries to show that there is representation for more than just what the typical what pops into your head when you think of somebody that works on a mainframe. Although I will say I'm a little on the geeky side and I may not fit into the Barbie stereotype, but there are all walks of life around here. But there has been a huge push since I came into my career to get women more included into um, these kinds of careers. I know there are special programs these days specifically looking for moms that were in the workforce at one point in time, decided to take time off to raise their kids, and now their kids are grown and they're kind of left hanging with no work experience. There's a push to get those people, those kinds of people, in the mainframe world because they have a completely different perspective from somebody else that did not follow that walk of life. Um, so I feel like the diversity is definitely greater. I will say there are still challenges that we face as just being a woman in IT. There have been many times where even nowadays somebody will come and they'll ask me something and I tell them, and they then go behind my back and they go ask a male colleague and they say the exact same thing. But I don't know if it's because, and I'm sure being young has something to do with it too. Um, because asking somebody that's been in the career for 30, 40 years, they want to get their opinion versus the person that's been here for 5. But it is a little bit of a letdown, and it kind of hits you in a weird spot where you feel like you're not doing as well as you might be doing. It makes you second guess yourself. Um,
Hmm.
so that's something that you have to work with, and it's a struggle and an obstacle that you have to get over. It's just like with speaking with authority. So
Hmm.
they have special training, and I have attended training classes. They have special training classes where the whole class is to teach women how to speak with authority, but not enough authority that you come off as bossy or that you're trying to push people around, because it's just for whatever reason, even when a male says, well, I think this might be true, for I don't know if it's just the way that brains are hardwired or what, but that is seen more as a confident statement than if a woman says the exact same thing. Then it's oh, well, you're second guessing yourself. And oh, well, they may not
Hmm.
know what they're actually talking about. So I think as far as the the landscape goes, it's definitely
Hmm.
different from when you started,
Hmm.
but some of the same
Yes.
challenges are absolutely still here.
Oh, very, very much so. And one of the things is learning how to basically keep cool and not let the emotions override the judgment. Um, Especially in today's environment where we're on more conference calls, things like that, and being able to work with that. And then we come into this thing about the left versus the right side of the brain, and with us being in this technical arena, we tend to use the left brain more because it's the analysis side. And but we have to be able to find those who also think outside of the box, which is using the right side of the brain, because that's where we bring in that creative problem solving. And there is a truth to this saying is that men are from Mars and women are from Venus because we do think differently and we approach things differently. And it's so interesting when, you get a spreadsheet from somebody, you can almost tell who created it by the way it's set up. You, you know, so we have to look at this, is this a black, white, or is it a gray issue? Is there, some common ground in between all this? And what was so interesting is that when we go to these technical conferences, I made a comment because there was a gentleman, there was a line actually outside the men's restroom. And I said, yeah, in the women's, there's no line, you know, and that's just another thing that, we see. But I think as women become more integrated into this, as you said, Caroline, you know, we do have a voice, and this push to get more women into the STEM is a very big thing. And I think it's going to be great.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yes. So then think about this. How do we do mentors and communications today? You know, one of the things when I first came in is that we would go to a break room and we would learn, we would sit down, have coffee, lunch, we'd go talk across the aisle. This is back in the day when there was cubicles and you could say, literally get up from your desk, walk around to your cubicle, or even just talk over the cubicle to solve problems. And today, you know, we don't have some of those things. For instance, what was it, Caroline, last year in New Orleans was the first time that we actually got face to face and met each other after working with each other for 7 years. And so that was really kind of interesting because it's so much different. And so, what has your experience been in this dynamic changing work from home versus actually being in an office setting?
One, it always cracks me up because we can look at each other on a camera all day long, but usually the first thing I hear when somebody meets me is, "Wow, you really are short." Because I can say I'm 4'10", 4'11", and everybody goes, "Oh yeah, that's short." But it's not until they look down at me that they go, "Oh, you're really short." So seeing people face to face and in person, it is different. When I
Hmm.
started, we were in an office setting. My internship, my mentors were there with me. I had one other fellow intern. There was only two of us. But yeah, we could throw stuff over the cubicles at each other, and we could go over there and bother each other. Now I believe most of the internships and like academy type
Hmm.
things are all virtual. And so there's people from all over the state, all over my state, I know for sure, all over the United States, heck, all over the world that they're pulling people in from, and they don't meet each other face to face. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I think it's just it things have to be looked at in a different way. Um, I don't know if it's the generation I was raised in, um, or the generation below me. I know so the millennials, I've I like phone calls. I was raised when we would wait till 8 p.m. when, the phone minutes were free, and then we'd call all our friends and we'd talk all night, but we had to wait till then. Text messages cost too much, so you didn't use them. Now everybody texts, and I have family members that if they find out that they have to call someplace to set up or order something, they'll just go somewhere else because they're not making a phone call. But if they can use an online system or if they can send a text message, they're all for it. So I don't know if it's people that have grown up with the technology just feel more comfortable with it, and they
Hmm.
don't necessarily need that one-on-one face-to-face kind of interaction to be able to make the same kind of connections and friendships. One of my first friendships I had was on a it was on an online game called RuneScape that I played back in 2007. And we never met each other. I don't even think we knew what each other's real name was. But we were, just as good of friends as anybody that I had met at school or work or anywhere else that I had. And I think that might just have, it's just something different with the younger generations. Um, as far as Zoom go, I'm used to Zoom. I'm used to face calling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to phone calls. I'm used to texts. And there's issues
Mm-hmm.
with text. You can send an email, you can send a text message, and tone doesn't carry over at all.
Right.
There, I have had plenty of arguments start because a text came over from somebody that I knew, and it came off nowhere near what they expected it to, which
Right.
is maybe one of the reasons I like phone calls. Um, but I feel like people have adapted to be able to get the same kind of connections that we used to be able to by all being in an office and eating together. I know there is a Discord for Z enthusiasts that I'm sure some people are on, and they have a virtual water cooler where they all meet up and they all hop on a Discord chat together or a video chat, and they all hang out and just talk, and they ask people questions. And I know I've used it plenty of times where I've reached out to somebody on the job that I, have worked with for a while and I trust, and I've asked them questions, and I've gone to the team and asked them questions, and still nobody knew an answer. So I just jumped over onto the Discord and asked somebody there, and I was able to find the answer to a question.
And as you just said, Martin, you've been doing VM forums since 1986, and tone really doesn't carry very well with text, even now, and that is, and that is so very true. And you can go back and read some of those old posts and you kind of go, whoa, you know,
They're mean.
um,
There's
yeah,
been
they
plenty of them. Yeah,
were,
you'll
yeah,
find them, and you'll Google something, and one of those will pop up, and you're like, man, guys, that's
yeah,
kind of
really,
rude.
yeah, exactly. And one of the things I do is that when I like to schedule virtual coffees with team members and literally say, go grab a cup of your favorite beverage and let's go. We're not going to talk about job. We're going to talk about personal, because we work with each other so much. And when we get into meetings, everybody wants to get right into the meeting. So, in fact, Carolyn and I were talking about this, is that sometimes we like to just take the first couple of minutes and just talk about everyday stuff, because that kind of helps break down some of those barriers as well, and to help set the tone for the meeting as, that we're going to have. Um, and
Well, it
so
makes
that,
I was gonna say it makes things more personal. I'm an over talker. I'll sit there and I'll tell you about everything all day long. But when you go into a meeting with even a client and you can kind of chit chat in the beginning, they feel more comfortable coming and asking you questions. It doesn't feel
mhm.
so impersonal that you're on here with people that you talk to maybe once a month, if that. You kind of know each other a little better. And so if you have a question that plenty of times I feel is stupid, I don't have an issue saying it because I don't feel like I know the people better. Um, the interpersonal relationships are definitely a big deal um,
Yes.
when it comes to what we do.
Well, and that leads into this next point here, is talking about career challenges. You know, um, I've worked in with 7 different companies over the last 43 years, and longevity is not the norm anymore. And I've seen, within Ensono, there's people that have been, Ensono has evolved over the years. So there has been some people that have been around 25, 30 years. Um, Martin, I don't know how long you've been where you are. I know you were a long time um, IBMer,
Since
you know,
1985.
1985. Okay. So that's a long time. But then we also come into this issue, especially when you're in a very technical side of it. Um, do you want to stay technical, or do you want to move into management? Because when you stay technical, it's, as you get up to those higher levels, you don't get the pay increases as much. And, you know, for example, Ensono has developed a career path for those that want to stay in a technical arena where they're an associate expert, which is the level I'm at now, and they have the ability to become a principal technologist, a distinguished technologist, or a fellow. So there is now a career path. And then the other thing we want to mention here is that, it takes the right person to work remotely because you have to have discipline and dedication to the task at hand. And I know, Caroline, you have some thoughts on this, especially coming in literally from the ground up.
Oh, yes. I love that we have included a fellow career path that you can follow. I enjoy doing the grunt work that I do. And for a while, it just kind of became like a understanding that at some point I was going to have to get into management. And I feel like that's a daunting thing that people uh, worry about, and they might not necessarily want to stay somewhere longer because of that. Um, I used to work with somebody back when I worked at a grocery store before this, and she would always tell me about how the only reason she was there was because the shoe factory she had worked at for 20 something years had shut down. And I feel like this is my shoe factory because I've been here forever and I don't plan on going anywhere. But I think that's kind of unique to me. A lot of people job hop all the time, and that's just kind of the norm now. And I
Hmm.
feel like it's been the norm for a while. You stay somewhere for 18 months and then you leave and you take your what you've learned and all of that somewhere else. Um, I guess I'm a homebody because I haven't been anywhere and I'll probably be here till, uh, my
Yeah.
wake. But
Yeah, and you'll
it
be a fellow by
absolutely,
that point in time.
yeah, I know. It absolutely takes the right kind of person to do remote work. It takes
Yeah.
somebody that is willing to self-delegate and keep up with what they're doing, and not, and of course there's, distractions. I have a 5-year-old and he distracts me all the time. I've been here
Yeah.
with him since the beginning. But that has never stopped me from doing what I do and doing what I do efficiently and effectively. Um, so it is a different beast, but I like
Hmm.
that more places are creating the possibility and
Oops, sorry.
ability for people to be able to do things like that.
Right. And, and we are talking about this is the work-life balance. When I first started, daycare was the only option. In other words, we would, my son was 9 weeks old and I dropped him off at the daycare and I literally sat in the parking lot and cried my eyes out because I was having to leave him. I fast forward to my daughter, um, because I started working from home. This is hard to believe. 24 years ago on April 1st, I started working from home. And 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And so I ended up spending, with her, she was at home with me for the first 14 months, because I was able to work from home and do that. Um, and so I was able to be home when she got home every day after school, which is really good. Sick days. Um, you know, we had a situation come up with my boys, and they were elementary school, and they both got the chicken pox back to back. So I was able to work nights. I would commute into downtown Atlanta, work at night, and my husband would work during the day. And so we were able to do this to be able to, keep that work-life balance. And then, oh my gosh, back in the 1980s, when you got a phone call that a system was down, you literally had to drive into the office to fix it. And then we got that sewing box, sewing machine laptop PC that weighed like 25 pounds, and you had to dial in with that baud, 1200 baud. Oh my gosh, if people had to deal with 1200 baud today, they'd go insane. Um, and so today, this flexibility is so much in the forefront. And I know Caroline, you've had some, especially with Dallas, you've had some experiences as well. You went on mute, Caroline. Oh, you muted you. We need to unmute you.
Yay, I'm back.
Yeah, there you go.
I accidentally muted myself and I was like, oh no, I can't unmute myself. Oh no. Yeah, so work-life balance, I think it's a huge thing. Just a couple weeks ago, my husband and my child both got a stomach flu. And so I was able to work from home and well, I always work from home, but I was able to take care of them while they were, miserable in the other room. And I kind of quarantined myself off and said, don't come in here. I'm not catching that. Um, but if I needed to walk in there and take care of him, it was okay. As long as my meetings were taken care of and my things were lined up, I could go in there, take care of them, come back. And if I needed to leave for an hour and stay an hour longer, then that wasn't really a big deal. Um, uh, Dallas, I've had him. I started working from home after he was born. I was in the office before that. And he's been here with me for 5 years and he starts kindergarten in the fall and I'm ready for him to go so I can, get something done. Because working with a child running around is it's something else.
Oh, yeah.
People like to go, oh, it's so nice that you're home all day with him. It's like, yeah, it's great. He kicks me in the head while I try to work. Um, so it's not always the dream that everybody believes that it is. Um, it's absolutely a different beast.
Yes. But the key here, though, is that we do have that flexibility so that when somebody is sick,
Yes.
we were talking about this, is that in today's environment, if you're not feeling good, or you don't have to worry about bringing all the germs into the office because we can work from home. Or if you're not feeling well, you can say, hey, I'm not feeling good. I'm going to go take a break and I'll come back. So we do have that flexibility to be able to do this. But the other thing is sometimes we forget how to turn it off.
Yeah.
In other words, I've been known to check my email on my phone at midnight and send a message, and people are like, what are you doing? And so we have to learn how to do those work-life balances, which then brings us to the next topic, is what's going to happen to the workforce as we age out. One of the things I have been very fortunate to do within Sono is I have gone from a full-time employee to a part-time employee. So I only work 20 hours a week now, and on this road to retirement. So my plan is to work for, maybe Caroline's going, yeah, you're going to work forever. We want you to work for forever. It's like, no,
I
I'm
was saying
not.
part-time. There's been times I've logged on at night for whatever reason, and Linda's on at 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, what are you doing?
I know it's hard. It's hard to break away and break those habits. I'm
I'm right
working
there
on it,
too. So it's
you
not like
know.
you're the only one. I'm also logging on at 8 o'clock at night because
Right.
you
See?
walk past it and you're like, man, I wonder if somebody emailed me back. And then you wind up on it, and there you are, and you get
Right.
sucked in. So that is another issue with having your work not be compartmentalized from
Mm-hmm.
leap cat and that. Hell, there's my cat. Hello.
Yeah. Martin put his two away.
That would have been
But
smart.
but these are some of the things that we're having to look at. The baby boomers, we are retiring. So then we have the millennials, the Gen Z, the Gen X's, and now the Gen Alphas that are coming up. And so what is going to be the implication of AI on the mainframe environment? Because, as we were talking, as we were putting this together, is back in the old days, we would understand why something was done. We understood why certain things were put into place. Whereas today, when you're working on something, Caroline, you see, well, this is the way we did it, just do it this way type environment.
Yes, I know when one of we had a couple people, actually, we had quite a few people at the end of last year that retired. And, there were people that had 40-year careers and they knew why things were the way they were because they were there when it was implemented.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, it's like this because back, on this Tuesday, back in whenever this happened. And so we had to do this. And I don't know any of that. And it's not like I
Mm-hmm.
can write down everything their brain knows and keep it where I can use that information. We kind of have to take everything we can from the people that are leaving to supplement what we have not been here for. And I don't have a clue how the poor Gen Alphas are going to do it. My son's a Gen Alpha. I'm not 100% sure when their generation started, but he's 5. So there's no clue what this industry or any computer industry is going to look like at the time when he starts working.
Right. And that's the thing is we have to be able to connect the past with the future, so that we can have that bridge of, you know, those that are retiring and this entire new workforce that's going to be coming into play. And with that, we have reached the end. And so this would be where we would have questions if there was any questions, but I don't, unless Martin, you have a question or two for us?
I wasn't going to ask a question, but I'd like to make a comment on the very last thing that you'd been talking about, which is
Mm-hmm.
there's an onus on us who think we know stuff to
Mm-hmm.
propagate it via things like blogs and podcasts and presentations
Mm-hmm.
like yours and indeed mine. To preserve for posterity. I do think there's also a tendency for people who are not in the know to think that this stuff has got a short life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're waving around manuals from the 1990s, and I showed you one earlier from the 1980s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff still carries a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
Takes
Very
certain
much so.
maturity to work out what's obsolete and what isn't. But like I say, I think it behoves us to write stuff and record stuff as if it's going to be useful for the next generation or even current generation, quite frankly. So
Absolutely. We
there is
can't tie
that.
y'all up in the basement forever. Eventually, y'all escape.
Yes, we will. We will escape. And here's our information. If anybody would like to reach out to us, you can find us at this information, our emails. And for those, we would absolutely love some session feedback. Martin, we would love some session feedback.
Don't worry. 2 lots from me, one as chair, one as audience. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So, anyway, so this concludes our presentation for today.
Excellent. Thank you.